Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Indira Guzman, and I have been working with Diane organizing the keynotes and panels for our conference Information Systems in Latin America. And I'm very happy to welcome our keynote for the first keynote sessions today. We have the privilege of having Andrew Burton-Jones today from the University of Quensland, and the current president of the Association of Information Systems, which is the association that supports this conference. And we are considered an ancillary meeting of the MCs of the Americas Conference of Information Systems. So I'm very happy to welcome Andrew Burton-Jones today. Thank you so much for agreeing to present on such important topic. So welcome, Andrew. Please go ahead, and thank you so much for waking up so early, because I know that for you it's a crazy hour there in Australia. Thank you. Hello, Andrew. Can you hear me? We cannot hear you.
I see. That's okay.
Oh, there you go. There you are. Hello. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Sorry, I was on mute. It was my fault. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I will just move my slide once so that I can see that it works. And then I will go from there. So I'll just do a practiced move of my slides. No, that didn't work. Let me try again. I will just, because I'm not an expert on Google Meet, I will just use my slides without the presentation view. The big idea of this presentation is that science is ready for AI transformation, because so much of it involves language on digital platforms. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, many of our tasks in science were still manual. We did things physically. We had physical journals in the library, and we wrote on paper. We used to post paper to people and so forth. But now all tasks, whether we're writing, we're reviewing, we're searching for literature, we're publishing, we're citing, everything is all online. And this makes science perfect for the application of AI, because it's all online and it can be used for learning and improvement through AI. But science has always suffered a language bias, and now that bias is even stronger. So the basic opportunity is that we can harness AI to transform the digital platforms of science, to make science more inclusive and impactful. Moreover, I would say that for an association like the Association for Information Systems, or any association of science, we could consider it not just a possibility, but a duty, something we should do or must do. Also, we should recognize that if we do this, it will be frontier work. We will make mistakes, we will have to learn, there will be many ways to do things, we have to figure out the right way. But it's something we should do together. So that's the big idea. What we have done is we've worked with the Latin American and Caribbean chapter of AIS from the beginning on this. We met with Professor Goodman early in this whole project to get started. And we're really pleased to have had panels journals, the Paxos, and AMSIS, and ISIS, and ESIS in 2024. And then in 2025, we've been doing trials, so tests, trying to go beyond just talking and actually show that this can work. And I'll show you the link below. I'll show an example of that that some of you may have participated in, thanks to the work of this chapter at AMSIS. I've found these two quotes to be very powerful and also very different. So the first quote implies that science doesn't really have like national biases built into it. Science is international, it's global. So the Marie Curie quote. However, the second quote implies that language has a bias, right? Language is shaped, sorry, science has a bias. Science is shaped by language, and language is shaped by geography, history, and so forth. So the first quote would be somehow ideal if there was no boundaries, just science is global. But the second quote suggests that science really is almost inevitably biased, because of the language we use. The language affects the way we think, the language affects what we can say, the language affects how we learn, and so forth. So a question for all of us is whether that means that science is inherently linguistically biased. And is that just part of science? Now, what we know is that there's immense variety of language in the world. There's about 7,000 languages. We know that language variety has been a timeless challenge throughout humanity. We have things like the Rosetta Stone, the Tower of Babel, and so forth. We also know that language variety has played a role in science in different ways over time. The key issue is that at any point in history, you had to learn the language of the day to participate in science. When it was ancient Greece, you had to be able to speak Greek. When it was Latin, you had to be able to speak Latin, and so forth. So you needed to, if you wanted to be a scientist or a philosopher, you had to learn the language to participate and to benefit from it. That then continued through the scientific revolution. However, by the 20th century, especially the mid-20th century, around the Second World War, so English became to completely dominate science, more than any language has in history. And the question is, as we get into the mid-21st century, should it remain English? Is that a fait accompli? Or can it be something different? So my proposal would be it can be different. There's lots of articles about limitations of English language bias, and you can find these in the news. You can find these in publications like Nature and Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, those sorts of publications. So this is not new, this concern. But it's still rarely talked about in our own field. And I think it's because it's so institutionalized that people think it's impossible to change or maybe even question. For example, at ICIS, or I just came back recently from Paxos, we were in Malaysia at the Paxos conference. Nobody apologizes for the conference being in English and that maybe it should be in Malay, or nobody even raises the issue. When we submit a paper to a top journal, say MIS Quarterly or something, no one apologizes that it should be in English. It's just taken as given. Many of us know citation systems and the power of citations and citation indices. The father of the citation index was Eugene Garfield. And in 1967, he wrote that it was really ideal if those citation indices would look at all languages and look at citations in all languages, everything. But at the time, he said it was much more practical just to focus on English language. So that just shows how these things build on each other over time. Early decisions that seem practical then build upon itself and make it even larger, the bias that's built into the system. So now we know that these citation infrastructures have a massive effect on science. So the basic problem is that it's not fair. So because of language bias, you have reduced participation in science. People who don't have English language mastery can't participate as well. They can't perform as well. And then science itself is hamstrung because of reduced impact. People can't benefit if they don't know the language very well. And these are examples of costs that have been included in the literature, right from students studying science, to searching for science, to looking at meta-analyses of science. English language bias causes costs in many elements of the scientific system. And one of my colleagues, he works in biology. He wrote this paper, and I like the image because it just implies that we're all running around a track. Except if you, a non-native English speaker, the hurdles are just higher at every level. So you read a paper, it takes more time to read. You write a paper, it takes more time to write. The paper is more likely to be rejected. It takes you longer to revise the paper. It takes you longer to prepare your presentation of the paper. You may decide not to go to some of the main conferences and so forth. And so they're just hurdles are higher at every level. And people like me who, are native English speakers, we have an easier job at every step. Moreover, because of the nature of digital platforms, this may just simply get worse rather than better. So we in this project, we see the opportunity of using AI to improve things, but the power of digital platforms and AI could be used simply to amplify the existing bias. It could be that unless we take steps, it will actually get worse. Now, the solution would be, let's say we all try to find a single universal language, but that didn't work. Historically, it was tried, Esperanto, but it didn't work. Another option is multilingualism by translation. So that's what we're trying. And interestingly, the model that the AI builds could essentially be like Esperanto. Right? It might itself be able to have one language, but we may not understand it. So, but we can still benefit from it. Now, immediately, of course, there are complexities. We cannot be naive. This is not going to be solved overnight, but I will run through them. So one series of complexities is just specifying what we mean exactly. What's the scope of what we're going to do? So with translation, you can think of literal translation, word for word, or sense translation. We translate the sense of something, the meaning. And good translation is more on the right, the sense translation. That's what we would want. But that's more complex. We have to think of the scale of the translation. Are we thinking of translating one paper? I submit a paper, I get a translation back. Or is it a library? The AISE library has between 65,000 and 70,000 papers. Do we translate all of them? If we do that, do we need a search engine to search across all of them? and so forth. Those 65,000 papers have references collectively, maybe to millions of papers. So we have to translate all of them, and so forth. There's also variance in dynamism. Should the translation be fixed so that when I download a PDF, it includes, say, four languages, maybe Spanish, Portuguese, Mandarin, Korean, or something? Or is it dynamic, that I click a button and it creates the translation in the language I want right now? Urdu or French or something, it just creates it. And there's different questions arise depending on the choice. It's also varying in multiplicity. So this image comes from a paper where they look at whether you should have one language or two languages as the hub. Everything gets translated in and out of this language, or if it's more like a network of different languages. And there's costs and benefits in different approaches. There's also the question of whether we should only focus on translation or look beyond translation to other or additional ways of using these technologies. So the term I'm using for this is localized adaptation. And you can think of this as producing things like summaries. So if I've written a paper, I could ask my AI to translate the paper itself into another language, let's say Spanish. But I can also ask the same AI to create a summary of the paper in another language, let's say Portuguese. And I can also say, produce the summary for executives in Portuguese. Maybe even produce a summary for executives in Portuguese in Brazil, or something, make it more specific. We have done this work of promoting papers in other languages already. When I was editor of MIS Quarterly, we had this project called Local Language Promotion, but it was all done manually. So this type of thing has been done already. It's been shown to be valuable, but we haven't been doing it with AI so far, but we could. The question is, should we do this as well? Also, there are philosophical complexities with translations. So you could think of a research paper as something intermediate between my mind as the scientist and the recipient's mind, your mind, who may want to benefit from science. So a paper is kind of going to describe everything I thought, everything I did, what I found, and what I think is important. I put that from my mind on paper, and then you read the paper. So the paper is like a mediator between us. And language bias is involved in every step of that process from my mind to your mind. So language affects the way I think. I can't think of certain things because I only have one language. Then when I write onto the paper, my ability to articulate what I'm thinking is limited by my linguistic skill. I can't think of the right word, so I use a different word. And then when you read the paper, what you interpret is based on the way you read it and the way you thought of things when you read the paper. It may be different to what I thought. So essentially, language plays a role at every step, and it will be impossible for us to use AI to solve every one of those steps because they're deeply philosophical questions. We can't even solve these questions with the one language. So there's no way we can assume AI can solve them for us. I mention these mainly because sometimes people say, well, this is complex, what about this? And my conclusion is, well, we can't even solve that now. So why would we expect we can solve it? Then there are very practical things like, what do we do about DOIs? What do we do about copyright? What do we do about plagiarism? Things like that, very practical things. And those too are complex. However, the consensus in the literature, if you look at people working on this topic, is that we shouldn't use these problems to stop the work. Rather, we should try to continue and just be mindful of these and look at these complexities as opportunities to improve. And we are not the only ones who believe this. So UNESCO had 3 main recommendations for open science, and one of them is to make science multilingual. And so we believe what we're doing is following the recommendations of UNESCO. Also, the Council of the European Union was calling for the development of scientific practices just a few years ago. So this is all like new and current and exciting for us to be working on this. But in business and in computing, it's very limited application. Most of the time, if you look for multilingual journals, they are they're just translating abstracts, you know, not full papers. So some journals you find abstracts in another language. But if you go on, you know, I go on Wikipedia and you look for multilingual journals, there's very few that exist. Most of them that do exist are because of, you know, the laws in the country the journal is from. Now, in the information systems field, we're very proud that we have this community, your community, with ISLA, AMSIS, and Relkazi. You've been leaders. In fact, Relkazi, I believe, it might have been one of the very first AIS journals, certainly in the first group of AIS journals. French community, they have their own French language journal. But in general, journals non-English journals have struggled because of the larger system in which we work, which privileges English. For example, in the German community, they had a German journal, Wirtschaft Informatik, but they changed it into an English language journal because they wanted to increase their citations. So this sort of problem exists, and it's because of the existing English language bias. So we've been using AI, multilingual models, and we've been building agent-based AI systems to help address this. And there's 2 basic scenarios. So one is that we take English as given, and we try to help the writer to write the paper in English. One of the communities we worked with actually felt that's what we should do, but for now we're focusing mostly on scenario 2. So this is, can we do reviews, and then can we publish the paper in journals in multiple languages? Can we do this with conferences? And in addition, can we do what I described before as local adaptation, creation of summaries and things in other languages as well? So we're trying to look at scenario 2 and work with people in the field to do this, including ISLA, including AMSIS, the Latin American and Caribbean track. So we formed a task force. I'm very proud that Indira Guzman and Jose Pineda are part of this task force. And as I mentioned, the chapter has been involved in this from the very beginning. Whoops, sorry. We've then developed candidate systems. So we helped build 2 agent-based AI systems. We've identified use cases, we conduct tests, we look up the results and so forth. And our goal as an AIS task force is to leave a legacy for AIS, to leave something that AIS can use, that we can maybe be at the forefront of using or creating multilingual science. And as I've shown at the bottom of the screen, already we've gone from using 1 language, English, to 11. So we've done tests and conference papers or workshop papers in English, Spanish, Portuguese, Greek, French, German, etc. We began with Mandarin, so there was an early test at Paxis where we took papers in Mandarin and we translated these. We moved fast forward to AMSIS, and if you go to ISLA2025, thank you to the Latin American Caribbean track. Some of you may be here, and these may be some of your papers, where they were papers accepted in the track, and if you click on the paper, you will be able to have the translated version in Spanish or Portuguese. So the author could recommend which other language the paper should be in, and we translated it with AI, had confirmation from the author that it was okay, and then it's been published. And then we just published this paper. This paper was published last month, a few weeks ago. And for more details, please look up the paper. We're excited to work with ISLA and this community, and I hope it can be very beneficial for you. And I'd like to say thank you. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for your presentation. It's a very important topic, so let's see what kind of questions and comments we have from the audience.
Yeah.
And I'll start with a question.
Yeah.
So my question is, what do you think can students and faculty do to be proactive towards this kind of initiative?
That's a good question. I think sometimes in research, all we need is to legitimate, to show that a topic is important and exciting. And once someone has done that, then other people can cite the work and make it better. So we've now published some panel discussions in ISIS, AMSIS, Paxis. We've published this paper. There are still lots of things to be done. So many interesting questions, technical questions, questions about use, questions about interactions with AI. Many of those traditional questions that are being raised about AI apply to this topic, but this topic is rarely seen in our journals. So, and yet we know so much about it intuitively. I imagine you have deep experience with having challenges with English language science. You know the research process itself, you know your language well. So I imagine your ability to write about this topic would be very high, very good. And you could think of lots of interesting aspects that are beyond what we've done so far. So I think it's a perfect topic for PhD students. Also, it's entirely an information systems topic because it's about socio-technical practices and artifacts. So it's the effect of digital platforms. So it's like 100% perfect fit. So I think just the opportunity is there. There's so many things to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Marcio, you have a question. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Indira. Professor, thank you. I'd like to know if I understand what you said in your presentation well, you are now come from English to another language, right? And the other way around, for translate the knowledge that's produced in Portuguese or Spanish into English. Are you dealing with that already in your systems or no? Or not?
Yes, we've done that too. So let me let me see if I can give you an example. Yeah, so if I just go back to my screen here, the you should be able to see the my screen, and I've got the AMSIS page up. So these are papers at AMSIS. The first paper, looks like it's in English, this one. And, this is an English language paper. But if I go, and so we translated, or let me just see, we translated this one. Is this Portuguese?
Yes.
Yeah. And then, but this next paper, if I go back, let's see, this one down here. This paper was submitted. Now, I'm sorry, I can't actually. Is this Portuguese again?
Portuguese.
Yeah. So it was submitted in Portuguese, and then we've then translated that into English.
Amazing.
So, but it was done. So if I hit translations and then download, this is the English language paper,
right?
And this was just done with AI. But I could have taken, if the authors said that they want their paper translated in, the Portuguese one translated into Spanish, we could do that too. Or if they said they want it in Korean, we can do that too.
And it's dynamic or static?
That's the question, yeah. So right now, it's static. The question is, should it be dynamic? And I think long term, it would be more exciting if it was dynamic. You know, you click the button and you say, what language? And you put it in the language you want. However, we may need a disclaimer then that says this is an AI translation. It may contain minor errors or something. You know, so we may need a disclaimer when that happens, because the AI might change some words, so they're not exactly now the same as what the author originally said, and this makes us uncomfortable in science that maybe it's not perfect. At the moment, we've taken the less risky option by preparing these translations, and then we send it back to the author and say, are you okay with this? And then, but that means that then it ends up being static. But I'm interested in other models. Maybe we could have different models, some static, some, and maybe a journal should be static, but conferences should be dynamic, something like that.
And finally, another question. I was thinking about the data used to train the model, the AI model, is up to date, because I think that our terms that are giving new meanings along the time, and most probably, depending on the data that the AI train, it will not accomplish the understanding, translating the way we expect.
Yeah. So most of these models at the moment, including ours, do use these very large language models under the hood, like OpenAI under the hood. But the power of this type of model that we're using is in an agent-based architecture. So we're trying to use the agent to think about what a research paper involves, not just translating text, any type of text. So what is special about a research paper? The one example is we need the consistency of meaning all the way through a paper. We need it to be quite formal in the way we're doing things. We need to handle things like tables and figures and hypotheses, statistics. We use an agent-based architecture to help us do this. Also, these papers tend to be quite long, and we need to manage the length as well. So it's like a tailored system, tailored AI system for science.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, indeed.
Thank you. Do you have any other question? Comment?
I have a question for your community, is whether there's anything we can do to help the ISLA community, or you see ways that maybe we can do things better for you, or we could work together. I would be super pleased if we could. Or with a journal, Relkazi, maybe. You can let us know today or another day.
That's a great question. I was actually thinking, and please feel free, anybody, to jump in, but some of the things that we need to do is, of course, work on Relkazi, in indexing Relkazi. That's one of the priorities. And we are now having the elections of a new board. So I am very hopeful that we are going to, because one of my objectives now is to put a lot of community work on improving the amount of submissions to the CASA. And I think we have to think on ways to increase the confidence to submit, and and increase the pool of publications in Spanish and Portuguese. So let's. I think we need to think in a way that English shouldn't be the barrier, right? To promote more research. So one of the questions that I had for you also was. Do you think this is something that should be part of the review process, in terms of, like, by the editors considering if the original language of the authors was not English, should it have like a special rating option or consideration or thought? Should that be discussed at all when somebody submits a paper, knowing that, again, wasn't English the first language?
That's a good question. I would like, we could do that. For me, it would be ideal if the paper was reviewed by people in the same language as the author, or alternatively, the paper represents the author's language, and the paper is reviewed in the reviewer's language, and it fits both of them. So again, I'll just share the screen. So this paper that we I think you should this paper we just published, and this looks like it's in English, right? It looks, this is all in English, but so if I just scroll through, this is the paper. The paper is also in Greek, right? This was a fixed translation. It's in Greek, and then it keeps going. We have Spanish, and we have this is Bahasa Indonesia. We get down the bottom, and this is Urdu. This is from Pakistan. So this paper was this paper was reviewed in each language. So we had a reviewer. He was a very good reviewer. Reviewer one was Petros. And he reviewed the paper actually in Greek and in Spanish. And when we sent the paper to the journal, we asked the journal which language would the reviewer come from, and they said they had a reviewer who could review in Spanish or Greek, and we sent the paper to the journal in Spanish and Greek. Now, I can't read Spanish or Greek, so we had to trust the AI, but the reviewer read the paper in the language of his language. And then there was another language, there was another reviewer reviewed the paper in Bahasa Indonesia, and the paper was translated in the review process. And then in Urdu, a reviewer. And in addition, the reviewer wrote the review in Urdu, and then we translated it back into English. So the example, Indira, your example is, it's an English language journal, and you submit in English, but you give it like a tag or something to say that this person's from a non-English country. But the alternative is we flip it so that we send the paper is translated into the language of the reviewer. The reviewer may be Spanish, Portuguese, Greek, Urdu, Bahasa Indonesia. They write in the review in their preferred language, and then we can translate it back into whatever language we're from. So, yeah, we just wanted to show that this is possible. Of course, right now, maybe the top journals will be nervous about this and won't want to do this straight away, but we will be committed to doing tests and showing that it's possible. So we've now done this at a small journal, the journal in Australia, and now we're going to try to do this with a test with a more higher level journal. And once we've done many of these tests in our conferences and our journals, we think it will be quite possible to expand. So yeah, that's my hope.
Certainly, definitely. I see the opportunity to expand, but I totally agree with the importance of increasing awareness. The more we talk about it, and increase the confidence, to submit papers, participate in the process. Diego, you have a question? Please go ahead.
Oh yes, I have a question. So first of all, thank you, Indira. Thank you, Andrew. That's a great presentation. Thank you for sharing it with us. So my point here is, did you have any kind of study to compare the balance from the use Google Translation to translate the material on demand, like Marcio asked, to run that on real time, instead of to use this on batch process to translate from the specific language and provide that for the reader. My point is, nowadays we have many other tools to provide this online translation, and that will be easier to share the content in any other language, not just the core ones,
Yeah.
Did you have any study about that and how it could be improve the democratical science for everyone?
Yeah, that's right, democratic science. At the moment, the system that we're using does use OpenAI within it. So we use the API to OpenAI as in our system. You could use Google Gemini or another Copilot maybe or something. It may be, as we go in the future, these models are so big, the LLMs are so big, it may be impossible for a small research team to create a model as good as, OpenAI, Google Gemini, it's just impossible. However, we can create agent-based systems that are tailored. We use that system, but we tailor it to science. There are some aspects about scientific papers that are different to just translating a sentence or a paragraph or something. So we can try to train something so that it handles scientific papers well. And maybe train it even so it knows information systems well, you know, the meaning of certain theoretical terms. So for instance, we could have an ontology for the field and so forth. We can also train it on our own text, you know, like the ISLA library and so forth. So we can train it to format papers for our different conferences using our templates for, you know, AMSIS, ISIS, etc., the different journals, the different citation formats. So we can localize and train the system. So I think within it, it will use these large systems, but we can localize and train it. That's how I suspect it will work best.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Nero, for the question. Thank you. The sky is the limit. There are so many opportunities from a technical aspect as well as, you know, behavioral perception. So, yeah, very nice. Are there any other questions or comments? I really liked your question about, you know, what can AIS do for Lakais and Relcasi as well. So I appreciate that openness, and we always appreciate the support from AIS, you know, having the opportunity to have these information systems in Latin America ISLA conference every year and publish the proceedings, and, you know, having this event that it's free for Latin America, and it's a great initiative.
Well, thank you for being part of it.
Okay, so I don't know if there are any more comments, but in any case, we gotta take a picture. That's a tradition. We all take a picture with everybody, so please open your cameras and let's take a picture. And yeah, the big round of applause. So yes, we're waiting for a few more cameras maybe to open for the picture. Las cámaras abiertas para la foto, please. Okay, well, and Diane, you're the expert taking pictures. Right? Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. A wonderful presentation. Appreciate your participation. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.